And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. It's another episode of the world-renowned, world-famous, and I believe now it is a confirmed fact that it is your favorite podcast, Keepin' It Rio. This is episode 178, and as you guys know, I love to find folks who have unique stories, who've overcome adversity in life, or have done things that are very uncommon. And I think that looking at our guest right now, Justin Willoughby, his story is going to surprise you guys. So I would like to just kind of leave it at that. I don't want to give too much away, but I believe this is going to be one of the best episodes of Keeping It Rio ever. And nothing, no stress here, Justin. So welcome to Keeping It Rio, Justin Willoughby. Thank you for taking time to be here. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Chuck, man. I mean, one of the best episodes ever. That's a lot of pressure to live up to, man. I don't know.
I've had some good ones. I'm not going to lie. I've had some superstar people on Keeping It Rio, but I don't think any of them's done what you've done. So this is going to be great.
We'll get her rolling. No, that's fine. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It's super exciting to be here. I'm glad, man. 170 plus episodes. That's a good run. That's a good run, and especially lots of stories that you will just probably your heart is to help people, encourage people, and just have some fun, right? That's what we're all about.
That's all it is. We're having fun. If people watch and it can help them, that's great. If people think I'm a narcissistic egomaniac for having a podcast, that's fine too.
I mean, you're not, right?
No, I don't believe I am. I believe I'm a nice guy, and I believe I just like to talk to people, and I like to have a good old time on my Keeping It Rio podcast that I made up on my own. And if anybody takes that too seriously, I apologize.
Hey, life's too short to be too serious all the time, right?
That's exactly right. So, hey, Justin, I can't help but notice there's a picture of a guy behind you. Who is that guy? What's that guy's situation? He's sitting on a couch. He's looking at you kind of mean mugging. What's going on over there?
Kind of like a pumpkin somewhat, like a little pumpkin vibe
you
going
said
on.
It. You said it. I respect it.
The orange shirt. No, man, that was what I was back in the day. I was probably, oh my goodness, we're looking at my top weight there, probably it's about 799 pounds at that point. I was roughly 16-ish years old, and that's a young age to be that large. Really, any age is not good to be that large, but especially as a teenager. So yeah, I look at that picture and I just kind of get inspired, right? Like that's something I don't want to go back to. And that's something that motivates me to continue going. And it motivates me to really just be the example to help other people, because so many times people are just walking around and they don't know how unhealthy sometimes their lifestyle is. I think they just think, hey, the food pyramid says this, I'm getting this, I move around a little bit during the day. I drink coffee,
Yeah, I'm good. Let's go. Right? Rock and roll.
But I think they're a little uneducated understanding that, this is a lifestyle that we developed in America to really increase obesity, being overweight, and just being unhealthy in general. So my goal and mission is to really lead other people to become healthier and to equip them with the right tools to really have a healthy lifestyle.
Yes. Okay. This is awesome, right? And I really love your motivation there. And I told you just very briefly, I had a weight loss myself of almost 100 pounds. And it was the same thing. I saw a picture of my face and I didn't like what I saw. And I still have that picture that I use. It's on my phone. And I look at it daily because you don't want to go back. So I always like to kind of reverse engineer things and kind of start from square one. Now, you said, at the age of 16, you're weighing in at 799 pounds. And that's pretty hefty. That's a big boy right there. I don't know anybody that's ever been born, weighing 799 pounds. So from some point from birth to teenage years, you found a way to get to where you became 799 pounds. So
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, because that to me that's the beginning of your journey. And that's what's going to inspire the rest of the people who maybe are feeling the way that you were feeling that point in your life. But tell me a little bit about how, as a young man, you got to the point where, number one, you got to be that large, and just kind of, what your mindset was like in that time frame.
Yeah, man, I can give you a loaded answer. I'll try to keep it all keep it all Rio with it. So I basically, I was always bigger growing up. I mean, I remember kindergarten, first grade, I was the pillow that kids would lay on during recess. I was just double the size. So I always had a problem with my body type in a sense of I was bigger. And the reason why I was bigger is because I had a big appetite. And then later on in life, kind of identifying that I had a food addiction, right? So looking at food addiction, some people are just like, I don't have a food addiction. No, I can put the donut down anytime. And truthfully, doesn't mean you're just addicted to a particular food, but it's just that going back to that whatever food over and over again as that, opt out of whatever you're feeling in a moment. So you'd be happy or sad or disappointed or angry, depressed, no matter what that emotional state is, you're going back. And you have to have it because that's that fix, right? That takes away the pain, takes away the whatever it is that you're struggling with at that moment. So I developed over time and looking back today, I didn't know during the time, but I had a food addiction looking back. And on top of that, Chuck, I also developed anxiety and panic attack disorder at a young age. So it was roughly 13 to 14 years old where I started developing panic attack disorder where I would freak out. I would have spells of just freaking out, spells of where I would just shake and feel like I was dying of a heart attack. And unfortunately, to cope with that, I would just go knock on my friend's door. Who's my friend? Food. I would just go knock on their door and say, hey, I'm struggling here. Let me just come in and have some. And it would temporarily take that away, but it wasn't long term. I mean, once you complete that meal or that food or that snack, a minute later, 2 minutes later, that's over. And you're sitting there feeling like I just been used by food. That's not a fun place to be, but it was a cycle that was over and over and over again. And eventually it just caught up with me, ballooned up an extreme amount of weight from the anxiety and panic attacks. It led me to not move my body as much as I should have. So I sat paralyzed in fear on medications, hopefully that were helping, but they really didn't. They just kind of numbed the pain for a temporary time. And then food was my only source of comfort. And then the anxiety was so bad, I didn't move my body to burn calories. So I was overeating, overconsuming. If you don't move your body to burn calories and you overconsume, what's going to happen? You're going to balloon.
You're going to get big. Yeah. Doesn't take long.
So that's how I developed that, what you see in the background there, that guy, that large person who I used to be. That's how that happened. And it was a slow fade, honestly, because at first you don't really see it happening, but the habits just continued and you just kind of keep going that direction and you just return to whatever's comfortable. And so that was a cycle. Return to what's comfortable, return to what's comfortable, return to what's comfortable. And eventually it just caught up with me and I had to go to a doctor. And the doctor saw me, it's probably 2 years since I've seen a doctor, which wasn't good. I know my parents, we almost got in trouble for that because I didn't have physical done for 2 years. And there was a particular insurance that they were on that required that. And I went, he saw me, this doctor, and he was just like, we need to send you somewhere else because you look like you're in a dangerous place. And that began a whole new adventure, which we'll stop for there, just case from there, but just seeing if you have any questions first before I move on.
Well, yeah, I mean, man, this is good, great stuff. I mean, I'm just looking at you as you're saying this, and I'm picturing, what you've gone through to get to where you're at right now. When you're a young person, in your early teens, like you said, you develop anxiety. Was the anxiety relative to your weight gain, which was probably also something that was maybe affecting you in school and publicly with other kids? I have to assume, we were all children when we were around, and sometimes when someone looks a little bit differently, they're treated completely differently and their lives can be completely changed and it can ruin people. Yeah. Without being too personal, is that something that you took into consideration as a kid? Was that something that led you into the state where you didn't want to be around people? You didn't want to be around anybody? Or did you just not feel like you were, I don't know how to describe it, but did you just feel like you didn't belong?
So it was interesting, man. Anxiety comes from some kind of trigger. Oftentimes there's some form of trauma most of the time that takes place for the anxiety disorder to develop. It's usually not It's usually not something that just comes out of the blue. There may be some rare occasions where it does due to a chemical imbalance in the brain and such like that. But for most people, there's a traumatic event that took place. And that traumatic event stays dormant at times in the subconscious for a long time. And your mind doesn't really go there until one day everything piles up and now it's there. And now your body needs to release because it comes to that tipping point, a boiling point. It's like, okay, this has been 3 years in the making. Now I'm going to blow up. And that causes that reaction from the body that causes the anxiety attack and panic attack. And my traumatic event I can trace that back to my parents. They're still married today, thank the Lord, but they had a really toxic relationship. They would consistently argue pretty much on a daily basis. They weren't getting along. And as a young boy watching my parents argue, swear at each other, my dad threatening to leave over and over and over again. Stability of the home is not there because I see my foundation, my parents at that point, they don't have it together. They're crooked. They're cracked. There's a cracked foundation going on, right? And so and it was weak. And so I think over time I would try to be the mediator between the two. I'd be the guy to be like, Mom, Dad's not mad at you, or Dad, Mom's not mad at you. She said I love you. He said, and I would try to just bring them back together and lie whatever it took to make that happen. And I took a lot of their arguments upon myself because I was a peacemaker. I really wanted them to get along. I didn't want them to get divorced. And so I remember it was so constant, and I'd cry. I would just be so down about it. And I look back today and they ask you, what do you think caused the anxiety? Well, I can trace it back to those moments of feeling like I was the only one to make my parents stay together. And there's a lot of pressure for somebody who wasn't even probably 12 years old at that point. Right. So it was really hard. And I think that's what it was. And so now today, just to bring some restoration to the situation I talked about, they get along really good. It's like night and day difference, right? They came to faith in Jesus and they applied that to their lives, and now they're different people. And so I'm like, where were you guys so many years ago, right? But it's okay. They're good. So yeah, I think that's what. And you touched on how about school, how about how you looked, things like that. That played a small role as well, right? Because body image, you don't look the same as your friends if you're that big. Like I was a big kid. Second to third grade, I think I was 200 and maybe it was fourth grade, but anyways, 210 pounds, really large for a second to fourth grader, right? So yeah, I look different. Yeah, kind of depressing. Couldn't wear some of the same clothes my friends are wearing. Couldn't do some of the gym activities they were doing during phys ed, things like that. And then of course, how I felt about myself was not good. I didn't know how much didn't feel about myself, but I think looking back, I didn't see my value and worth. In fact, kids would pick on me at times in middle school as middle school erupted, upperclassmen. They literally would, I would walk up the stairs to go to the next class and they would be behind me making fun of me on my backside, right? And like, oh, that's holy crap, who's that fat guy? Like things like that. And I'll spare the vulgar terms, but I think that all kind of mellowed, kind of joined up together and created this one big perfect storm for anxiety to develop in my life and depression on top of that.
Yeah, that's a lot to take on as a young person. And, like you said, you were in your mind at that time, you were literally the savior of your family and you were the one who had to do it or else it was all going to fall apart. And that's a tough thing for anybody to deal with at any age, but especially, 12, 13 years old. And I can certainly understand how you could develop the mindset that you did. And, like you say, it takes a few years to finally get to your point where, I think the line that you used was a donut shy of 800 pounds.
Yeah.
And you got to this realization in your life. You said you went to the doctor and the doctor kind of maybe scared you a little bit into reality. But at what point do you look yourself in the mirror and say, look, Justin, dude, you're not going to be around very long, bro. You're not going to live. If you do, this is what you're going to be. You're going to be some guy that's confined to a couch and they're not coming to save you. Like they always say, you got to do it yourself, bro. You got to pull yourself up and you've got to do it. But getting to weigh 799 pounds, getting up and doing this stuff is going to be a lot more difficult than it is for most folks. So when you get to that point, tell me a little bit about how you finally came to the realization, like, dude, I got to do it. And then when you started making things happen, how did that work?
So I had to, I mean, it's sometimes it's interesting, isn't it? When you don't recognize or realize things are happening to your body or to you as a person, your mind, or maybe you have an addiction, we don't normally, most of the time, we don't point it out ourselves. I mean, it might be a rare occasion where we may, right? But you technically can say, I don't have a problem. What are you talking about? I don't have a problem. I'm good. I mean, we'll just ignore it because it makes you feel good to keep going back to what works for you or what gets you through the moment. But it was a reality check for me when I had to go to the doctor's office when I was sharing a little bit ago. And I couldn't go in a normal vehicle. I could, I guess, but it was an Oldsmobile Intrigue. It was a large full-size vehicle, actually. And I couldn't fit in the vehicle. My dad literally I had to sit down. My dad had to push me in the back seat and lay down the back seat. And I still couldn't really fit. And he really had to move my leg in a certain position to stick there to close the door. And so looking back at that, I'm like, wow. And at that point, I'm recognizing this is a big deal, right? This is a big deal. Well, then it comes down to going to that doctor and him seeing me in first time in like 2 years. And it might have been like 18 months, but kind of give or take some months out of that. But he was just like looking at me like, his eyes just popped out of his head, right? In shock and awe, right?
Yeah.
Of what you look like now compared to what you looked like 2 years ago. And I want you to know, and it's important to know, it was a slow process, but a fast process at the same time. Over 2 years, I don't remember how much weight he told me that I gained from his previous chart, but it was hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Again, I was always a bigger kid, but like that really, like that built up very quickly. And it's so my eyes are starting to be open at that point, but not enough to really make changes. It was simply just oh my goodness, things are getting out of hand. It didn't really come to a tipping point for me until I ended up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of the children's hospitals down there, up there now. I used to live in Pennsylvania, used to be down. Now I'm in Texas, now it's up. So, but I had to, when they took me in an ambulance to Pittsburgh from my hometown in Pennsylvania, it was uncomfortable. I couldn't sit in a normal stretcher. They gave me a gurney it was like one of those things that people would be rescued out in nature or something. They put you on a thing where they put you on like this big platform and they have handles all around to carry you. Like I had to sit in one of those with a pillow underneath me. Terrible, terrible ride. Get to the hospital in Pittsburgh at about 3.5 hours from where I lived. And then they weighed me, and I didn't know what the scale said. I didn't see the scale. My mom saw the scale, and she started crying, and I just tell something was different, something was off. And I was really feeling kind of self-conscious at that point, embarrassed, unsure of what's happening in my life, because this is pretty traumatic for a young boy, right? I'm 16, and I'm going in an ambulance to Pittsburgh by myself with strangers, and I had to go to the bathroom, and so I almost wet myself. And, there was just a lot of moving parts to this that just seemed so unreal. It's like something you'd see on the Discovery Channel, right? Like these big, that show My 600-Pound Life or whatever it's called. Like those are things that you see on TV today. And I was like living that. It was insane. And it was my mom, she was sitting in a chair by the wall looking up at my bed. And so my dad there too. And she comes up and just whispers in my ear. She goes, honey, you know what you weigh? And she's crying, right? And I said, no. I mean, they didn't tell me, right? She goes, you weigh almost 800 pounds. You're 799. And I was like, what? So we just started crying, like, because it doesn't seem possible. And that's when it came to a breaking point for me where I had the reality came in, like, wow, this addiction, this anxiety disorder, this lifestyle I was living was creating death in my life. I mean, I was just a walking death sentence, really, at that point. I didn't know, at that point, how do you come back from that? Like, it seems so overwhelming, right? I mean, how do you come back from that? It's just, so I had to find some options, but that's where I was at. And that's when the realization hit me, is August 2003. So remember that in Pittsburgh, that's what's the month. And it wasn't the same. I wasn't the same since that month, since that year.
Yeah, and wow, I mean, what a traumatic experience, like you say, as a young man, to go through all that and to have that realization. And now it's like, okay, I see that there's a problem. I understand that I need to do something, but seeing and understanding and then actually getting up and doing, again, completely different scenarios. So you've been so used to the lifestyle that you've been living for several years now. And, you know, 800-pound guy is not going to get up and run a half marathon. So how do you get started? Because to me, there's two ways that I think about this. Number one, it's almost to me like, okay, when you weigh that much, it's probably pretty easy to lose a decent amount of weight pretty quickly because there's just so much. But then there's also the mindset of, you know, there's just so much. My gosh, how am I going to continue doing this? And even if you see little progress here and there, it's tough, right? Like, I don't even understand how difficult your life was, but I understand it was tough. So tell me a little bit about the process from, okay, now I got to do something, man. I'm 16 and I'm probably not going to make it to 20. And the doctor's shocked and my mom's crying. And I love that was your eye opener. That's beautiful. But now what happens? Because you've been living that life and, you know, the stuff's got to change pretty massively for you to get results. Tell me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be an answer, right? Because if there's no answer, then you're done. I mean, so I'm pulling for everything I can pull. I was trying to remember things and what did I learn? So yeah, at 16, so I'm a guy that believes in Jesus. Like I didn't have that at the beginning, but I developed that in the hospital, right? I had a little bit of it before that, but it came to a good place when I was in that hospital. But I'm like, my life.
You start to realize your mortality at an early age and you think, well, okay, you know, this is real. So I respect that tremendously.
Yeah. It's like, you got to evaluate. And even at 16, I had the mindset, I had the discipline, I had the wisdom to acknowledge this isn't a good way of living. And I recognized that the way I was living life wasn't working. And so it's like, all right, obviously the way I'm living is not working. My life, I'm throwing it away. I'm going to give it to somebody who wants my life. And that's when my faith became a reality. And I started clinging to that, understanding my value, understanding my identity, understanding that wasn't some fat blob. Like I would call myself that. I'm not, this isn't my normal terminology for people who are overweight. I just want everybody to know that. But this is what was in my mind, right? And so
we're our own harshest critics, for sure. Yeah. Yes.
I would never say that to anybody else, right? But to myself at that point in my life, I'm like, I'm a lardo. And this is their names that people that would speak at me, right? They would tell me, okay, Lardo, okay, Waddles, okay, Ducky, things like that. And other things. They would say other things too, but I'm not going to repeat those today. But it just comes down to all those things were in my head. They were in that subconscious part of my mind, and knowing this is what I thought about myself. And eventually I had to rid those. And I said, you know what, God, I don't know anymore. I don't know. Like, here you are. Here you go. I give you my life. Here it is. Just take it, use it. Forgive me of my wrongs, and just let's move on and take control. And then it changed my outlook. And that's when I started to actually perceive life differently, that I had purpose, meaning, value. And when you start operating out of that lens, and I didn't know how to do that at 16, I'll be honest. Like I knew of a different mindset, but that developed over time. It's just, you learn a little bit and go. The biggest thing at that point in my life is I recognized that there was hope. And that clued me in to really just anticipating that next step. Like, how can this be different? And so, but I was in a good place mentally from that point. Okay, I have to do something about this. Yes, it's scary. Yes, I'm unsure. Yes, I don't know if I'm going to live or die. I really don't. I didn't know. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
who
that's just
knows?
reality. Yeah, for
And
sure.
I had to, and that's when, the mindset changed, and then the desire to live changed as well. So both of those kind of lined up. And that's when, as I was given some help from the hospital, they came into the room, the room in there that I was staying in at such a large weight, and I would have these pretty nurses come in. Actually, like I was enjoying that as a 16-year-old dude. I was like, yeah, this is nice, and they would help me get out of bed and walk and stand. And I couldn't stand for too long, probably about 30 seconds, and I had to sit back down because of the pain levels. I walked very, you call it walking, but you more like waddling to get to the good place. Um, that was maybe 4 steps, 5 steps, and I had to go back to my bed. But it was a process that started. And then it kind of intrigued me to keep going because I'm making some progress. This is more than I was making at home before I came to this hospital. And so I started having more hope. And then after a week or so, they said, we're going to have to send you home, which was good because I wanted to go home. But then I was worried about that. Like, what's that going to look like? Because now I'm going back to my old stomping grounds, my
Yep.
old way of life, right?
Familiarity.
Yes, where I could be comfortable and food was at my disposal and all this. Well, they gave me some help from home, an occupational therapist and a physical therapist, visiting nurse at that point, and also some regular doctor visits. And that was a godsend because as they sent me home, I was able to build relationships with these individuals, this medical team, who would hold me accountable and who would love on me and inspire me and pray with me even and encourage me and just they're my biggest fan. It was amazing. And it was the encouragement I needed to stay the course. So here's the good things that started happening. I started eating healthier. At that point, it was just cardboard and water. That's what it tasted like. And from that point on, I moved my body more. I tried my first mile that I completed from starting my journey took me about 33 days. And that's
Little
steps.
steps at a time. That's
Mhm.
tremendous.
Mm-hmm. So it took me 33 days to complete 1 mile. And then after I completed that 1 mile, I remember just like I would put my therapist, my physical therapist at that point, she gave me the idea, hey, from your bedroom to the kitchen is 1 lap, and back is 1 lap. So put a penny in the jar every time you go, and 33 pennies equals, or not 33, it was like maybe 70 some pennies equal 1 mile. And so I remember counting down how many days it took to do that, and it was 33 days, but I did it. And then inspired, I did it in 15 days, and then give or take a few days. But you get what I'm saying? It just gets easier. And then finally 10 days, and then 6 days, and then 5 days. And over a period of several months, here I am getting that mile in maybe in a week or less. And I was just building up from there. So, and changing my food. And after 2 years of doing this, 2 years of staying committed to that, I dropped 400 pounds, 200 pounds each year. And now we're seeing the fruit of our labor.
Right. Yeah. And that, again, I can't imagine that process because I didn't live that. But during this journey, through the first 400 pounds, did you get discouraged? Did you want to quit? Did you quit at any point and then have to kind of shake yourself and say, dude, what are you doing? Did those thoughts enter your mind at any, and they had to have, I mean, it's human nature, but
Yeah.
how are you able to combat those as they were coming at you? Because when you're trying to fight the good fight, there's all kinds of evil headed your way. And this is a tough one. So how did you deal with that?
I lived above a convenience store.
Nice.
So we had candy, pizzas, cappuccinos, whatever, ice creams, like, at those convenience
My
stores.
parents had a convenience store when I was growing up, and I was a chubby little boy myself. So yes, I definitely understand.
Easy access, right? And so my brother, he passed away a couple of years ago, a year ago, actually, a little over a year ago. But he had autism. And so I manipulated my brother into going to fetch me some treats on a consistent basis when I was feeling very tempted. So was I absolutely perfect on my design of following the menu of this is what you eat to lose weight? No, wasn't perfect. But again, we had little slip up moments. I followed it most of the time, but yeah, I had moments where hey, go get me, a couple Snickers or Twix candy bars, and you know what, let's go buy a pizza. I'm gonna have the whole thing. You have one slice, like, and I'd be such.
We split the pizza, yeah.
I get one piece for it for your efforts. Yeah, I was. I mean, I had days, man. I did that, but at the end of the day, after you recognize from having success, you recognize that doing that again put you backwards, because I was so excited to lose a pound. I would just be blown away by the weight coming off, that those days became less and less because I was just motivated to continue. I wanted to see that. I mean, I felt good. Yes, I was tired. Yes, I didn't always feel good, but at the same time, I was intrigued and I was motivated and inspired to keep that scale going down. And after the 400 pounds, it took about another 3.5, 4 years, 5 years actually, to lose the rest of that weight. So, and that's where more of the discouragement came in. It wasn't necessarily those 2 years. It was more of the later on when things weren't moving when I wanted them to. It was more when I had to up the exercise and I was feeling too tired to do that, or I had to drink more water, or I had to switch up the diet a little bit. Those things were a little more difficult. And when I became more mobile, I was able to get those things by myself that I wasn't supposed to be having, So it was just a process, but it was full of grace on myself and mercy on myself. It was full of constant accountability for people checking in on me and just being available to be checked on, because if we're so closed and just me, myself, and I community is not going to work for us, right? It has to be me and other people who can speak into my life that I trust. And so, yeah. And then my vision just changed. I'm like, this is amazing. It feels amazing. I want to help other people. I want to be the example, to be a light in a world that is lost. They don't understand how to become healthier. They have diet culture screaming, don't eat carbs, don't eat eggs, go ahead and don't drink diet soda, drink diet soda. Like there's all this these mixed voices, intermittent fasting, don't intermittent fast, exercise fasted, don't exercise fasted, right? There's all these different approaches to health and wellness. And my approach is just very simple. It's whatever works for you, we're going to try it. Right. And whatever you can do to be healthier, like eat healthier foods, obviously, move your body more and get rid of the sugar, get rid of the white flour, you're going to be okay. Like, let's just start from there. And then you can build on that if you want to with the fasting thing or the eggs, or like, don't worry about the other stuff right now. Let's focus on becoming healthier, disqualifying these other foods from our diet and eating more whole food approach, and maybe a little bit less of those junk foods. Not saying cut them all out, I'm saying, let's make some changes. And that's where we start to see the magic happen, right? Because it's not this overnight, like everything's got to change right then and there, but it's more like this slow process, and people stick to that a little easier, one step at a time. So that's where I'm at today. Is I set the example. Yes, I coach people. Yes, I help people by leading them in particular programs here and there. But at the same time, I understand that sometimes people just want to know where to start. And that's my goal, to help them do that.
Yeah. And I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of folks in this world that are just feeling hopeless. And that was the word that really stuck out to me when you said, I had hope. And sometimes that's all you've got, but that's all you need, and it pulls you through those times, and it pulls you to continue moving forward, to continue your progression. You see something in yourself at this point where you realize, yes, I am going to help other people that have gotten into the same situation that I did. I understand how it works. I understand. And not only do I understand, I've actually done it. So there's credibility there that most fitness coaches don't have, because I don't know too many other people that have lost 600 pounds. So that gives you a certain credibility with that community, to where, you're somebody that people can look up to and they can idolize, and they can say, you know what, I want to be like him. And to go from one extreme as a depressed, anxiety ridden preteen teenager to now an adult who has gone through this arduous process. I mean, like you say, it takes years and years and years of consistency and work, and feeling down on yourself, getting back up on yourself, trying it, not trying it, doing it, not doing it. And when you get to the end of that journey, you look in the mirror and you say, wow, that's pretty insane, really. Your story is incredible. And the thing that I always love to ask people, because I've had a few different people have had some inspiring stories, is at what point does that first person touch base with you and say, Justin, dude, I'm in the same place you were. I saw your story somehow. You resonated with me, and I need your help. I need you to know that you've inspired me to make a change, but I need you. When was the first time that an occurrence like that happened to you where you realized, yeah, this is legit and I can help these people because they do need me?
I was it's as you go on, I mean, as you start to lose weight, people notice and they see you getting smaller. And so there would be some questions. Hey, what are you doing? And I remember at the local YMCA, I would get people come up to me, hey, what are you doing? Or people who see me at the store as I was walking around, hey, you look different than you used to. Like, what are you doing? Obviously there's a big drastic change for me. So that has always been the case for me. Like as I was starting my journey, people would reach out in sense of, hey, they'll call me, text me, tell me and ask me in person. But that began to stop. I'm from a small town, about 8,000 people. And after so long, it's like, okay, nobody's really going to ask you anymore. But then there was a TV publicity time, right? It was when TV shows started calling because they caught wind of my story, because it was in, I believe, what really caught the attention. What was that one? I know it was in a National Enquirer at one point. And then there was some form of a Huffington Post. That's what it was. The Huffington Post. And they put my story in one of the top 5 stories, inspirational weight loss stories of the year. Forget what year it was. But that opened up an avenue for TV shows to call me and say, hey, let's get, I had Good Morning America and the Today Show call me in the same day. In fact, I got confused on who was who because they called me within the same hour. And I thought they were connected, but I assumed they were connected, but it was 2 different shows. And so I had to, one wanted me, the other one wanted me, and you couldn't go on both because it's competition and they wouldn't want you, right? So I informed them, hey, I got another offer from this show. Which one of you are the live show? And today's show was the live show segment. And so I want to take that because I've been on shows before. And they would edit out, like, when I spoke about my faith just for a moment, like, wasn't preaching to people, but just simply saying, like, this Jesus guy is real to me and it helped my life. And they would, like, edit that out. And I just got discouraged at that. I'm like, this is not my story when you take that away. Like, just at least let me have a little piece of the puzzle in there. I don't have to go out on a tangent of preach. But I do want to share that because that's what changed my life in the long run. That's the foundation. And of course, the exercise and doing things to become healthier was a big part of it as well. So I picked the live show for that reason. So I remember going on there, and after that was done being aired and completed, I started getting all these Facebook messages just flooding in, like, "Hey, Justin," adding to Facebook and all these things. And I was just like, wow, this is pretty incredible. I couldn't keep up with all the messages coming in. And so I then started answering as much as I could. And then other TV shows opened up. I mean, other magazines opened up, and I was just getting pretty incredible, sharing my story. Unfortunately, at that point in my life, though, I wasn't ready for all the publicity, and I had no follow-up to give people except for messages and things like that. Where today you have, hey, sign up for the newsletter, at least stay connected, or hey, buy my book, or something along those lines.
Check me out on Keepin' It Real.
Yeah, exactly. Or a podcast, So yeah, you get me. But yeah, that's what really opened up the doors to the publicity and people getting to know your story. Now, here's an issue today. There's a lot of people doing this, right? The fitness industry, social media is saturated with people documenting their story, sharing with the world how far they're coming along, what foods they eat, what exercises they do. And I follow a lot of those people and try to talk to them. And it's a lot more difficult to break through all those voices to get your message out there. I have noticed that. So it has slowed down a little bit of people inquiring about how to lose weight because there's so much information out there. But there's a point where you have to hone in on one niche, whatever you want to call it, that, and then really just have people come to you from that,
Yep. And I think you've got that. There's not a ton of people, competing in the space for, people that are in that state at that condition. So you've got yourself a specialty there. And I think it's amazing. I really, truly do. And one of the things that I do want to ask about the weight loss, I want to kind of take a step backward, is you mentioned accountability. Now, accountability, it has different meanings for different people depending on how sensitive they are or the state that they find themselves in. In some cases, people need tough love. In some cases, people need encouraging motivation. Um, how did you find the group? And I mean, your parents obviously were there with you from the very beginning. They loved you to the point where they kind of did let you kind of let yourself get out of control, but it's a parental. I understand that, and that's not like, hey, how could you let your kids get that big? But I get it. And so going back on the reverse of that, when you're going the different direction, how did the people in your life adapt? How did they accept the fact that, we're going to have to be aware of this to the point where we're going to have to make changes as well? We can't be doing the things we were doing at a previous time because the results are not going to be what we want. So how was your support circle when it came to that? And, tell me a little bit about how you were able to just continue that path and the people that were motivating you and some of the ways that they were able to keep you pushing forward.
So it was a lot of times at the beginning, it was my occupational physical therapist and my parents and my brother and I had a couple good buddies that would check in with me, from school, from high school and things like that. So I had that network at first, and there were times when my parents, especially my parents, they would still eat somewhat how they used to eat, how I used to eat, not necessarily the big helpings and all that stuff, but just the foods, right?
Some of the things. Yeah.
Oh man, there were times where I would just cry. I'd be like, no, you're eating that. And I really want that, but I know I can't have that. And I talked to him about that, just crying as a kid, because I don't know how to process that feeling. Today, I just feel like, go ahead, eat what you want. I don't care. I'm in a good place. But back then, not sure how to process these things. I was like, you guys don't care. You're sitting there eating this, and I wish I could, just gets going off on them. And I didn't handle it the best way, but they got the message, and they said, you know what, we're gonna make sure we don't eat that stuff in front of you anymore, and so it's just having those conversations. And then as I got older and more mobile, I started developing more friendships. I went to church, I developed friendships there, having jobs, going friendships there, even during the midst of losing the excess weight, right? And I remember just sharing with my friends, hey, can you just maybe text me once a week or once every other day or something, and I'll text you too, because accountability, I'm gonna be real with this too. Accountability is not just all on the person you're talking to. I think we have a serve me mentality with accountability. No, true accountability is a two-way street, and also you taking ownership of your steps. So it's you, even if the person doesn't answer you, you write to them, text them, call them. You be the one to take initiative and say, hey, this is where my day's at. This is what I did today. Man, I had a pack of Oreos today, and I feel really bad about it, but that's where I'm at. And there's power in confession. And so the accountability, just paving the way and setting the temperature for it, for what it looks like, communicating what your expectations are. That's what I had to do to make sure I had good accountability in my life, and how people adapted to that around me. And eventually got to a point as well where people could eat in front of me and I wouldn't care. In fact, hey, go ahead and have some French fries if you want to. I might have like 5 or 6 of them and I'd be done, because I was in better place, right? And so that was helpful too. I had a good buddy. He was probably one of my better friends. His name's Larry. And he was opposite of me. He was a stick figure, man. He was really thin, and I was really large. And so we put ourselves together. We looked like a number 10, So, but he would eat whatever he wants, but he would also check in with me and just say, hey, how you doing with this? And when I went to overeat, he would take the food away from me. And it sounds kind of like, don't touch a hungry dog's food bowl, right? But I was in a good place where he could take that stuff away, and I wasn't being mindful. I'd mindlessly eat sometimes, and he would have to help me with that. So yeah, I've had set up good accountability and success. There's days where I avoided it. There's days where I didn't want it because I was hiding in the dark, and I knew what I'm doing wasn't good for me, but I didn't want to face it that day, and it caught up with me. You can't lie. You can lie, but it's not going to serve you well.
And that's the truth. And the reality of the matter is, the only person you're lying to is yourself. And you're the only one that's going to, reap the benefits or the the negative from your decision. So I think that's amazing. And it shows a ton of self-control, discipline, motivation. Um, what an amazing story. I mean, I can't even thank you for this enough, because it's just I'll watch this episode after the fact and I'll just be absolutely amazed by your story. As we're doing it, I'm trying to think ahead for the next question, but when I sit and watch these, it's like, wow,
Mhm.
that's tremendous. So one other thing as it pertains to the actual weight loss, and then we'll start kind of winding down a little bit,
Mhm.
but I know several people that have lost large amounts of weight, and obviously there are cosmetic things that happen with your skin and so on and so forth. Sometimes your skin doesn't shrink at the same rate that your body does, all kinds of excess and stuff like that. I see you on the camera here, and I see no signs of any of that going on. Like it's very natural looking and all that. Is that something that you had to experience? Did you have any types of procedures to help with it, or how did that work out as far as the
Dude,
massive transformation?
it was so cool. So I mean, I had some surgeries completed. You could see like a scar there. This one I had done too, but you could see it kind of it's gotten a little loose, right? But I had a scar there. It was this tight before. Now it kind of got like that. I had my chest done. I had my stomach lifted. I had my legs done, but my legs need done again. Certain parts of my legs have a little extra skin on them. But so how this came about, when I was in some magazines, my story really caught on. And a surgeon actually reached out to me and said, I want to offer you my surgeries for free. And I was just like, wow, I mean, that's pretty incredible. So he did the whole apron thing where he took off the stomach and looked down to see my toes finally. And then,
Huge accomplishment, right? You don't think in those terms until you can
yeah,
actually do it, and then you think, wow, what have I been missing this whole time?
right,
That's
right.
beautiful.
Yes. I could, finally, I mean, my chest looked normal in some capacity, not like I needed to wear a bra, and again, I say these things, that's what I used to think of myself. And then I noticed my arms started to look better. I could actually see some muscle development as time went on. Like, so I had probably did I have two or three free surgeries for skin reduction. And it was just a God blessing, honestly, because I couldn't afford, it was $100,000+ surgeries for all those together.
Yeah.
And then there was another one that I had completed about 5 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago. And that's what was on my legs, because my legs really, and they still need another one because they're so much stretched out. Now it's not terrible. I'm not saying I could live with this. It's totally fine. But that was money that was raised in my community when I lived up in Pennsylvania. It was about $28,000, $30,000 to get that completed as well for my lower body. They did a butt lift and they did the legs, little lift on the legs, and they took off about 3-4 feet of skin.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, and they still have some more they could do, but so yeah, cosmetic involved, absolutely. Truthfully, it set you free. I mean, you can lose. There's a lot of people who lose the fat, lose the weight, but they're stuck with that skin, and it kind of just, even though it's a blessing that you lost the weight, you're still sitting there and you're like,
It's a little
wow,
demoralizing.
you're
Yeah.
still, yeah. It kind of messes with kind of messes with you. I don't look good. I feel. I mean, it messes up your
Yeah. All that
confidence.
work, you should
Yeah,
feel awesome about yourself.
yeah. So that had to be I mean, I had to get to a better place, and I have to today, and sometimes it's still hard for me to wear shorts in public. I do. I mean, just because my calves has some excess skin and some varicose veins on there that kind of really stick out. And I don't mean to, but I watch people's eyes as I walk past them, and they will do that little glance thing. And it's just human nature to be curious. I don't fault I do the same thing. When I see something abnormal or different or unique, I will do just a little quick glance and look away, right? Not to be rude and stare the whole time. But it messes with you a little bit when it happens to you. So I have to really, really think deeply about that before I wear shorts in public. I'm like, you know what? God, you're with me. I'm just going to go do this. I'm just going to go do this. So I go and I do it. There's days where I'm stronger than other days, but I'm a work in progress on that. And will a surgery fix that? I mean, it's never going to fix your mindset. So you can get all the cosmetic done you want to, but there's always going to be, if the mind's not fixed, there's always going to be something that needs improved.
That right there is why you've been successful with losing 600 pounds. That's a tremendous way of thinking about it. And that this has been a tremendous story. Like I said, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to share it. The people that watch my podcast are very diverse. I've got crowd, like I told you, it's about my roofing business, but it's not. Like I have roofers and stuff on here, but this is not a typical episode, but this is not one that's atypical.
Yeah.
And one thing I always like to ask, because we do have such a diverse crowd, there's going to be somebody that sees this that is absolutely touched by your story and says, I need to reach out to this guy because that's where I'm at. I need some advice. I need him to show me what to do, or tell me how to do it, or just to tell me that I can do it. Yeah. What are some ways that people that watch the episode that want to follow Justin Willoughby and understand more about themselves as well as follow your journey, what are ways that they can do that?
So yeah, they can connect with me. Social's easiest, always easiest to get involved, and connection with somebody. So I was lucky enough to get my Facebook as my name. So facebook.com/Justin Willoughby, just my name. And it'll go right to my page for that. And I answer a ton, I'm pretty active on socials throughout the day. I do have TikTok as well, which you can find as well. It's Coach Justin W. And then I'm on all of them. I don't have to name drop everything, but really the easiest one is Facebook and TikTok are the two that people could get to me. And then email, justin799willoughby@gmail.com. Very easy. If you don't do socials, it's a great way to go. So you can just email me and we can connect, and whatever it is you need, I can answer that question.
I love it. And I hope that somebody does take you up on that offer and that you help change somebody's life because of this episode. That's why we do what we do. And it's a lot of fun, but I take a lot of pride in that fact as well. And there have been many times where people that I don't even know have come up to me randomly and said, I saw this episode 1.5 years ago and I reached out to your guest and he sent me a copy of his book and yep. We became friends. And that means a lot to me. So yep. Moving forward now in life, you've found your purpose, my friend. You've accomplished something that a very, 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 very minute percentage of our population in history could ever say. And you're inspiring people left and right. So what does the future hold for that? What are you looking to do? How are you looking to continue to help others? What is the plan moving forward for Justin? And, how's that look?
Dude, I'm never content with my journey. I have to do something more, and I have to find more. I have to be healthier. I have to always search for what brings optimal health to the individual, because it's beyond weight loss for me now. Even though I have the tools and the resources to help people through that, it's when you go to a 2.0 version of yourself, sort of fun starts to happen. So, I try all sorts of things like hydrogen water. I try things like, you hear these things just become these health crazes, and some of them are just far-fetched. I'm just like, this is stupid, but I want to try it, right? But like hydrogen water, so far, some good results. I've also done trying some vibration plates where you stand on it and it just moves your body. It vibrates your body.
Yeah.
And there's some really good benefits to that. Into red light therapy, into grounding, where you just put your feet on the earth, where God created those frequencies to meet your body again and help you, and getting out in the sunshine. Like there's those next steps where people can actually feel optimal in their health. And there's supplements. I don't endorse any of them. I don't sell any supplements, but there are particular supplements that I would recommend to go next level. So like I said, there's what's next for me is just 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 version of myself. I'm never going to be satisfied. I just want to keep going to become the best version of myself that I can be. And then I want to take other people with me. So if it is 1.0 version of you, then I want to take you to 2. If you're at 2, I want to take you to 3. And so every life that I come across is an opportunity. Every person who contacts me is just an opportunity to share health and wellness and a hope to them. And then I coach people, write books. I have my own podcast where people follow me and they hear my story and hear other guests as well, like you're doing, which is amazing. There's really a lot of avenues, one person at a time. That's all it's about, reaching one person at a time, changing their lives, saving their lives, and helping them become the best version of them.
That's really it in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that it could have been said any better than that. And what an amazing story. What an amazing person. I have really enjoyed this 54 plus minutes of conversation with you, Justin. And again, I thank you for taking time to sit down we met about a minute and a half before we started this, and it's been absolutely a joy for me. I do really quickly I want to give a shout out, if I may. I would like to give a shout out to the Today Show for warming you up for your appearance on Keepin' It Rio. It was like the Today Show was kind of the warm-up event, and now you're in the main event over here with Chuck at Keepin' It Rio. And that's just me being delusional because I can on my own podcast. So thank you guys for that. And for everyone that watches the show, again, thank you. Always, do your deal with subscribing and liking and sharing and all the cool things. And again, this was an amazing story. I hope it touches a lot of people. You've really inspired me, and I didn't feel like going out and doing my walk this evening, but I'm going to go do it now. So thank you for that. And until next time, I always like to end with the corniest tagline in history. I know you've got a podcast, but I've got the corniest tagline in history, and it is simply keep on